The Chosen Season 6 Episode 1 is finally here, and everything changes from this point forward. This isn't just another episode, it's the beginning of the darkest, most emotional chapter the series has ever dared to tell. We're stepping straight into the night that would reshape history forever, from betrayal to trial. From silence to shouts of anger, the weight of every choice begins here. And if you thought you were ready, trust me, you're not. The opening of Season 6 drops us into a story that isn't spread out across weeks, months, or years like before. This season is locked inside a single day, the final day before the crucifixion. And Episode 1 wastes no time setting that heavy tone. According to Dallas Jenkins, almost everything you're about to see unfolds under the cover of night. And that isn't just for dramatic effect, it's intentional. The Gospels tell us how betrayal, denial, and trial all happened in the shadows. And now the show mirrors that darkness, literally filmed overnight to capture that haunting energy. And that choice hits hard because from the very start of this episode, you feel that uneasiness creep in. The silence feels louder, the tension feels sharper. It's as if the air itself knows what's coming. This episode focuses heavily on Jesus' trial, and it's unlike anything we've seen in the series before. It's not a quick moment or a short exchange, it's the unraveling of truth against falsehood, dignity against cruelty. After Jesus is arrested in the garden, the night becomes a battlefield, not of swords or spears, but of words, lies, and power. He's first dragged before Annas, the former high priest, who still holds influence. Behind the scenes, Annas presses him, questioning him about his disciples and his teachings, searching for anything that could be twisted into evidence, and Jesus responds with quiet boldness. He doesn't beg, doesn't plead, doesn't try to argue his way out. Instead, he simply says he's taught openly in public for everyone to hear. It's such a powerful moment because instead of defending himself, he exposes the emptiness of their accusations, and then comes the slap, a guard striking him across the face, not because of guilt, but because truth threatens power. That single act sets the tone for everything else that follows: injustice cloaked as justice, cruelty dressed as order. From there, Jesus is sent to Caiaphas, the high priest, and things only escalate. Caiaphas gathers the Sanhedrin, the council of religious leaders, and this becomes the stage for chaos. Witness after witness is brought forward, but their testimonies crumble, their lies don't line up. It's frantic, desperate, and yet they push harder. They want him guilty no matter what. And then comes the turning point. Caiaphas asks Jesus directly if he is the Messiah, the Son of God. The room holds its breath, and Jesus speaks the words that seal his fate. He says, "You have said so, but I tell you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the Mighty One, and coming on the clouds of heaven." That answer wasn't just bold, it was considered blasphemy. In that moment, Caiaphas tears his robes, a sign of outrage, and the council declares Jesus worthy of death. But here's the twist: they don't have the power to execute him, they need Rome. So, before Episode 1 ends, Jesus is dragged to Pontius Pilate. This first section of the season is layered with meaning. It's not just about trials in a courtroom, it's about the trial of humanity itself. Every accusation, every false testimony, every shout of anger reflects how far people will go to silence what threatens them. And what makes it even more gut-wrenching is Jesus' silence. He doesn't fight back, because he knows this was always the plan. His calm is unsettling because we, as the audience, know what silence costs him. Episode 1 places us right there, not as distant viewers, but as witnesses caught in the storm of injustice. You feel the anger of the crowd, the fear of the disciples, the desperation of the leaders. And through it all, you see Jesus choosing not to resist. He carries himself with a quiet authority that makes his accusers look smaller by the minute, even as they believe they're in control. What's even more chilling is how the production mirrors this darkness. The episode doesn't rely on daylight or wide open spaces, it traps us in shadows, candlelight, and whispered schemes. You almost feel claustrophobic, like there's no escape, no fresh air, no light breaking in. And that's the point. This is the night before everything changes. And The Chosen makes you live in it, breathe it, and wrestle with it. It's not comfortable, it's not meant to be, and that's what makes Episode 1 such a bold opening. It tells us immediately, this season isn't about spectacle, it's about sacrifice. It's not about miracles, it's about the cost of truth. But what makes this even more powerful is how the cast pours everything into their roles. Jonathan Rumi as Jesus doesn't just act, he embodies that quiet strength. The weight of knowing what's coming and choosing it anyway. You see it in his eyes, in the pauses between his words, in the way silence feels heavier than speeches. The tension builds because we, as the audience, know the outcome. But watching it unfold still feels shocking, heartbreaking, and almost unbearable. That's the genius of this episode. It's retelling a story we already know, but in a way that makes us feel it all over again. And when Pilate enters the scene, the stakes rise even higher. Because now, it's not just about religious leaders, it's about Rome, empire, and power colliding with truth itself. So if you thought Season 5 was intense, Episode 1 of Season 6 makes it clear that we've only scratched the surface. This isn't just storytelling. It's history, faith, and emotion colliding in one of the most unforgettable hours of television we're going to get. Now as Episode 1 unfolds further, the focus shifts to Pilate. And this is where the tension becomes almost unbearable because Pilate is different. He isn't like the priests and leaders who are consumed with rage. Pilate isn't convinced that Jesus has done anything wrong. And that's what makes these scenes so gripping. On one hand, you have the religious council screaming for blood, and on the other hand, you have a Roman governor who just wants to avoid trouble. He questions Jesus directly, asking, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus answers in a way that leaves Pilate unsettled. "You say that I am." It's not a denial. But it's not the kind of confession Pilate expected either, and in that moment, you see the conflict start to build inside him. He doesn't see a criminal in front of him. He doesn't see a man guilty of rebellion. He sees someone different. Someone calm in the face of rage. But Pilate is also a politician, and that means one thing: he's under pressure. The pressure comes from the crowd, who by now is growing louder, more restless, more dangerous. They're not just murmuring accusations anymore, they're shouting for death. Pilate knows that if he doesn't act, the people could riot. And a riot in Jerusalem during Passover is the last thing Rome wants. So he tries to find a way out. He learns Jesus is from Galilee, which falls under Herod's authority, and he quickly sends him away, hoping to wash his hands of the whole mess. But that plan doesn't work. Because when Jesus stands before Herod, something chilling happens. Herod isn't angry like the priests, and he isn't conflicted like Pilate. He's entertained. He's actually excited to see Jesus, hoping he'll perform some miracle, some trick to amuse him. But Jesus stays completely silent. He doesn't say a word. That silence, that refusal to play Herod's game, angers him. So instead of justice, Herod mocks him. He dresses Jesus in a robe meant for kings, a cruel joke, and sends him back to Pilate like discarded trash. Now Pilate is trapped. He's out of options, and the crowd is boiling over. He tries to reason with them, repeating that he finds no fault in Jesus. But reason doesn't stand a chance against anger. The religious leaders stir the people, and the shouts grow louder. "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate still resists, offering one final solution. As part of the Passover custom, he gives them a choice between releasing Jesus or Barabbas, a known criminal, a man guilty of violence. If there was ever a moment for the crowd to come to their senses, this was it. But instead, they scream for Barabbas. They'd rather free a criminal than let Jesus go, and that choice, that horrifying choice, seals the direction of the episode. It's betrayal, not just by Judas, not just by the leaders, but by the people themselves. The very ones Jesus healed, taught, and loved now reject him. This is where Episode 1 digs deep into the emotional core of the story, because it's not just about what the leaders or Pilate decide, it's about the weight of humanity's choice. Barabbas is a symbol of all of us. We are the guilty one set free, while the innocent one is condemned. Watching this play out on screen isn't easy. You feel the injustice pressing down, you feel the heartbreak of the disciples hiding in the shadows, and you feel the heaviness of silence as Jesus allows it all to happen. And what makes this even more powerful is how it mirrors our own lives. We're reminded that it wasn't just the people back then who turned against him. It's every time we choose the world over truth, comfort over faith, self over sacrifice. That's what makes this episode cut so deep. And yet, The Chosen doesn't just focus on the politics and the crowd, it zooms in on the smaller, personal moments that make the trial even more devastating. Take Peter, for example. In the same night, while Jesus is standing before leaders and governors, Peter is outside, facing his own trial in the courtyard. He's questioned 3 times if he knows Jesus, and 3 times he denies it. The rooster crows, and Peter realizes what he's done. That moment is like a second betrayal running parallel to the first. And the way The Chosen intertwines these stories in Episode 1 is chilling. Jesus inside, standing in silence before his accusers, while Peter outside breaks under pressure. Both trials happening at the same time, but only one man standing firm. The emotional weight of that contrast leaves you stunned, because it reminds us that even the closest followers of Jesus stumbled when fear took over. By the time Episode 1 pushes toward its close, the story feels like it's spiraling out of control. Pilate, despite knowing the truth, bends under the pressure of the crowd. He orders Jesus to be flogged, hoping maybe the punishment will satisfy them. But this isn't just punishment, it's brutality. The Roman flogging wasn't a few lashes. It was skin-ripping, soul-crushing violence, and as the soldiers mock him, dressing him with a crown of thorns, hailing him as king of the Jews, the episode forces us to sit with the weight of cruelty. It's not quick, it's not clean, it's drawn out, raw, and meant to humiliate. And the worst part is that Pilate still tries one last time to present Jesus back to the crowd, hoping the sight of a broken man would soften their hearts, but instead, the shouts only rise higher, crucify him, that chant echoes through the night, sealing the fate we all know is coming. Episode 1 ends not with closure, but with a sense of dread, because we know the story is only beginning. Jesus has been condemned. Pilate washes his hands in front of the people, pretending he's free of guilt, but deep down, we know he's not. The disciples are scattered, broken, watching helplessly as everything they feared comes true, and the weight of silence hangs over it all. That's how The Chosen Season 6 Episode 1 leaves you not with answers, but with questions. Questions about justice, about loyalty, about how humanity responds to truth. It makes you uncomfortable, and it's supposed to, because this is the night the world chose darkness over light, and this is only the first episode. By the time we step into the next stretch of this story, something becomes clear. Episode 1 isn't just retelling history, it's making us live inside it. The betrayal in the garden, the trial before the leaders, Pilate's hesitation, the crowd's fury, it's all a chain reaction, each moment pulling us deeper into a night that feels endless. And that's exactly how it's supposed to feel. This episode isn't about rushing to the crucifixion. It's about forcing us to sit with the weight of every decision, every voice, every silence. And as we move past the trial and sentencing, the story shifts toward what makes this moment not only tragic, but world-shattering: the rejection of the Messiah by those he came to save. Think about Barabbas for a second. The choice of the crowd to release him instead of Jesus isn't just cruel, it's symbolic. Here's a man guilty of crimes, violence, and rebellion, and yet he's set free, while the one who healed the sick, fed the hungry, and loved without limit is condemned. That image is burned into Episode 1. It's not subtle, it's direct. The show forces us to watch the exchange play out, to feel the injustice, to understand the weight of substitution. Barabbas walks free because Jesus takes his place, and if you really sit with that for a moment, you realize that's the gospel in a single scene. Jesus stands silent while guilt goes free, and The Chosen makes sure we feel the sting of that choice, not just as history but as a mirror of our own lives. We are Barabbas, we are the ones who should stand condemned, yet here we are, set free because he stayed. That's the power of Episode 1. It isn't just telling a story, it's holding up a mirror. But what's just as powerful is how the episode shows the ripple effects on the people closest to him. The disciples aren't bold warriors here, they're broken, confused, and afraid. Peter's denial has already shattered him. He thought he could stand firm, but when the moment came, fear took over. And now the weight of shame is crushing him. You can almost feel the guilt radiating off him. And The Chosen doesn't let us look away. Instead of glossing over it, the show lingers on the pain of failure, reminding us that even those who walked closest to Jesus fell short. And yet, that's not the end of their story. That's part of what makes this episode so heartbreaking. You know redemption will come later, but right now, all you see is the collapse. And that collapse hits hard because it's real, it's human. Then there's Mary Magdalene. She doesn't get much spotlight in the trial itself, but her presence in this episode carries emotional weight. She's watching someone who gave her life back, someone who freed her from darkness, now being humiliated and condemned. It's not just heartbreaking, it's crushing. Her silence mirrors Jesus' silence. You can see the grief in her eyes, the helplessness of watching someone you love walk into suffering and knowing you can't stop it. That's the kind of storytelling The Chosen excels at. It's not just big speeches or grand moments, it's the quiet grief, the silent tears, the broken hearts that make these episodes unforgettable. And then there's Pilate. He might not be a hero, but he's not painted as a simple villain either. Episode 1 shows him as a man torn between justice and politics, truth and pressure. He knows Jesus is innocent, he says it more than once, but in the end, he caves. Why? Because he's afraid of losing control. He's afraid of the crowd. He's afraid of Rome's reaction if things spiral out of hand, and so he makes the choice that will go down in history. He washes his hands, pretending that absolves him, even though deep down he knows it doesn't. That moment is one of the most haunting in the episode, because it's not just Pilate, it's all of us. How many times do we wash our hands of responsibility, pretending we're innocent while standing by as wrong is done? Episode 1 doesn't let Pilate off the hook, but it also doesn't let us off either. As the episode nears its close, the weight of everything comes crashing down. Jesus, beaten, mocked, and rejected, is led away. The crown of thorns digs into his head. The robe meant to mock him now drapes over shoulders already raw from flogging, and the soldiers laugh, treating him as nothing more than a joke. It's not fast, it's not clean. It's drawn out to make us feel the cruelty, to sit in it, to realize just how far humanity has fallen in this moment. And yet, through it all, Jesus doesn't fight back, he doesn't resist, he walks forward, calm, steady, carrying the weight of the world in silence. That silence screams louder than any words could. It's unsettling. Because we expect defense, we expect protest, but instead we get surrender. And in that surrender is strength we can barely comprehend. What makes this all the more powerful is knowing this is only the beginning of the season. Episode 1 is just the setup, and yet it already feels like the ground is shifting under us. The Chosen doesn't hold back. Here it plunges us into the most painful night of history and makes us walk every step of it. And while it's brutal, it's also beautiful, because it reminds us why this story matters. Without the darkness of this night, there's no resurrection morning. Without the betrayal, there's no redemption. Without the silence, there's no victory. That's the tension. Episode 1 leaves us with a night that feels endless, but a promise that light is still coming. So as the credits roll, you're left shaken, breathless, maybe even angry at the injustice you just watched. But that's the point. The Chosen Season 6 Episode 1 isn't here to comfort you, it's here to wake you up, to make you feel the weight of what happened, to prepare you for the road ahead. And if this is only the first episode, then what's coming next is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen on screen. If there's one thing Episode 1 makes clear, it's that The Chosen is no longer playing it safe. The storytelling has shifted gears completely. This isn't about small miracles in fishing villages or quiet teachings by the sea. This is about the collision of truth and power, love and hate, life and death. And what makes it also gripping is how personal it feels. You're not watching a distant story, you're right there in the middle of it. Every shout from the crowd feels like it's echoing in your ears. Every silence from Jesus feels like it's pressing on your chest. The Chosen doesn't give you space to look away, because this story isn't meant to be comfortable. It's meant to break you down and make you see just how much was at stake in those final hours. And that weight isn't just carried by Jesus, it's carried by the entire cast of characters. The disciples, scattered and afraid, show us what it means to be human in the face of fear. They're not painted as heroes here. They're confused, overwhelmed, and running out of courage. That makes the story hit even harder because it's not polished or sanitized. It's raw, it's messy, it's honest. Think about Peter again. His denial isn't just a side note, it's a full-blown collapse. And Episode 1 lets us feel that collapse. You can almost imagine the sound of that rooster in his ears, haunting him long after the courtyard goes silent. That moment is devastating, because Peter loved Jesus, but in fear, he still turned away. And yet, we know the bigger story, redemption, will come later. But right now, Episode 1 doesn't skip to that hope. It forces us to live in the failure, because that's what the night before the crucifixion really was. Failure after failure, betrayal after betrayal, silence in the face of truth. And then there's Judas. His shadow hangs heavy over Episode 1, even if he isn't in every scene. He's the one who started this chain of events. He's the one who walked with Jesus, learned from him, ate with him, and then sold him for silver. That betrayal isn't just historical, it's personal. It makes you sick to your stomach because it's so close to home. We've all known people who smiled to our face while plotting behind our backs, but this was deeper. This was betrayal with a kiss. The Chosen doesn't sugarcoat it. Judas isn't a monster from the outside, he's a disciple from the inside. And that's what makes his role in Episode 1 so chilling. He represents the kind of betrayal that hurts the most. Betrayal from someone who was supposed to love you. The emotional toll of this episode is brutal, but it's also balanced with a sense of awe. Because even as we watch Jesus mocked, beaten, and condemned, we're also watching him stay unshaken. That calmness in the face of chaos feels supernatural because it is. He's not just enduring injustice, he's embracing it. He knows what's coming, and he's walking into it willingly. And that is where Episode 1 hits its deepest note. Every slap, every lash, every false accusation doesn't weaken him, it reveals him. It shows us a strength beyond human, a resolve that no amount of cruelty can break. And that's what makes the silence of Jesus louder than any speech. His lack of defense becomes his ultimate defense. His surrender becomes his victory. What makes this all even more chilling is the atmosphere created by the production itself. Almost the entire episode takes place at night, surrounded by darkness. That wasn't just a creative decision, that was deliberate. Dallas Jenkins himself said they filmed mostly overnight to capture that heavy, eerie energy, and it works. Watching Episode 1 feels like being trapped in a world where light has been swallowed whole. The torches flicker, the shadows stretch long, the air feels heavy, and the tension never lets up. It's poetic because the Gospels describe these events happening under the cover of night. The betrayal, the denial, the trial, they all unfolded in darkness, and now, on screen, we're made to feel that darkness too. That choice makes Episode 1 more than just storytelling, it makes it an experience. But perhaps the most haunting part is the crowd itself. Because let's be real, it's easy for us to watch and shake our heads at their choices. How could they scream for Barabbas? How could they demand crucifixion? But episode 1 doesn't let us stay comfortable in judgment, it forces us to ask the harder question: how often do we do the same? How often do we choose the world over truth, convenience over conviction, fear over faith? That's what makes the chants of the crowd echo so loud. They weren't just their words there, ours too. And the show leans into that tension, making us realize this isn't just their story, it's ours. And then there's Pilate's infamous moment of washing his hands. On the surface, it looks like an escape, a way to free himself from guilt. But the truth is, no amount of water can wash away what just happened. Pilate's name will forever be tied to this decision, and episode 1 doesn't let us forget that. You see the conflict in his face, the hesitation in his actions, but in the end, he still caves. He chooses comfort over truth, safety over justice. And as much as we want to point fingers, we're forced to admit that we've all been there. We've all chosen the easy way out at some point, even when we knew it wasn't right. Pilate's moment becomes our mirror, and that's what makes it sting. By the final stretch of episode 1, the atmosphere is suffocating. Jesus is no longer just on trial, he's condemned. The crowd has made their choice, the leaders have made their choice, Pilate has made his choice, and now the path forward is set, crucifixion awaits. The silence of the night is broken by the chants of a crowd that won't be satisfied until blood is spilled, and the disciples, scattered and broken, can only watch from the sidelines, powerless to stop it. That's how episode 1 leaves us trapped in the darkness of humanity's worst night, waiting for the unthinkable to happen. And yet, even in that darkness, there's a spark of something bigger, because we know how the story ends. We know the darkness doesn't win forever, but in episode 1, that hope feels far away, almost impossible. And that's the genius of this season, it doesn't rush to the light. It makes us wrestle with the night first. It makes us feel the weight of every step, every choice, every lash. And that's why episode 1 isn't just a beginning, it's a warning. The road ahead is going to break us before it heals us. And if this first episode already feels this heavy, imagine what's still to come. By the time episode 1 reaches its final moments, you can almost feel the air being ripped out of your lungs. The entire episode has been building, scene by scene, like a drumbeat that refuses to slow down. And now, we stand at the edge of something terrifying. Jesus has been beaten, humiliated, and condemned. The crowd, still restless, screams louder than ever. The leaders, full of pride, believe they've won. Pilate, hiding behind the pretense of washing his hands, has sealed the fate of an innocent man. And the disciples, scattered into the night, are left trembling in silence. Everything feels lost. Episode 1 leaves you with that ache in your chest, that uneasy feeling that the world has tilted completely off balance. And maybe that's the point, it wants us to sit in the weight of this night, before the storm of the crucifixion breaks loose. But the brilliance of The Chosen is how it refuses to give us easy answers. Episode 1 doesn't end with hope tied up neatly in a bow. It ends in the chaos of betrayal and injustice. It ends with Jesus walking toward the cross, a road so heavy that no man would ever choose it except him. That's the power of this story. It forces us to ask, why would he do it? Why would he willingly walk into pain, humiliation, and death? The answer is chilling and comforting all at once, because he did it for love. For people who mocked him, who denied him, who betrayed him, for people like us. And that realization is what makes this episode hit harder than anything else we've seen so far. This isn't just about history, it's about us. Every denial, every betrayal, every compromise we've made is written into this night. And yet, he still chooses the cross. That's the part that doesn't let you breathe easy. Episode 1 also plants seeds of what's to come. You notice how the disciples, though broken now, will have to rise again later. You notice how Peter's denial, though devastating, is not the end of his story. You notice how Judas's betrayal, though final, sets into motion the very thing that will change the world forever. And even Pilate, for all his cowardice, becomes another piece of the puzzle that will lead to the greatest act in history. Everything feels like it's spiraling out of control, but in reality, it's being woven together in a way only God could plan. That's the mystery of this episode. It looks like chaos, but it's actually destiny. It looks like defeat, but it's actually victory in disguise. And that paradox is what makes The Chosen's retelling so powerful. It doesn't let us just watch history. It drags us right into it, forcing us to see the beauty hidden in the darkest night. And let's talk about the emotional roller coaster the audience goes through. One moment, you're clenching your fists in anger at the injustice. The next, you're holding back tears as Peter breaks down in shame. Then, you're frozen in disbelief as the crowd screams for crucifixion louder and louder, until it drowns out every voice of reason. The writers of The Chosen know exactly how to hit the heart. They don't rush past the pain, they let you sit in it. They don't paint the disciples as untouchable, they show their flaws. They don't portray Jesus as distant, they make his silence speak louder than thunder. That mix of raw humanity and divine strength is what makes this episode unforgettable. The chilling part, though, is how relatable it all feels. Because when you strip away the ancient setting, the robes, the torches, the temples, you're left with choices that mirror our world today. People still trade truth for comfort. People still deny what they know is right because fear is easier. People still sell out loyalty for gain, and people still choose the crowd over conviction. That's why episode 1 doesn't just feel like a biblical story, it feels like a mirror. It makes us ask the hard questions. If we were there, would we stand with Jesus? Or would we melt into the crowd? Would we speak truth? Or would we stay silent like Pilate? Those questions linger long after the episode ends. And that's why this season already feels like its most powerful yet. And yet, even with all the darkness, there's something magnetic about watching Jesus walk forward, his silence, his endurance, his unshaken resolve. It's almost unbearable to watch, but you can't look away because deep down, you know what's coming. The cross is near and the resurrection is beyond it. But for now, we're trapped in the in-between, that space where everything looks broken and hope feels impossible, and that's exactly why this season is going to be unforgettable. The writers aren't rushing us to the resurrection, they're making us wrestle with the weight of the cross first. They're making us feel every wound, every word, every choice that led to this moment. And the result is storytelling that leaves you wrecked in the best way possible. So when episode 1 fades out, it doesn't give you relief, it gives you a challenge. It dares you to carry the weight of what you just saw. It dares you to see yourself in the story, and it dares you to come back for episode 2. Because the journey has only begun.